And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Kyle Edward Ball, whose feature film debut, Skinamarink, is now in theaters and is coming to streaming. We are so excited you're here, Kyle. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're really excited to chat with you. Because this was like when we first saw the film, we reached out to the production company. We're like, hey, we need to get you on the podcast at some point. And you're like, yeah, when the movie comes out. And so
and we were like,
here we are.
Well, when will that be? Not that long, actually, since Fantasia.
Yeah, originally it was going to be Halloween 2023, but for reasons, it got expedited.
Yeah, so what has that been like? Well, actually, hold on. What is Skinamarink about before I start asking all the questions? For our listeners who might not be familiar, can you just tell us a little bit about the movie?
So Skinamarink is a lo-fi experimental horror movie. The premise is two small children named Kevin and Kaylee, ages 4 to 6, wake up one night to discover their dad is missing and the doors and windows of the house have vanished, so they can't get out. So they go to the living room, put on cartoons, and kind of go into like a slumber party atmosphere. And over time, it becomes evident that there is something else in the house.
Yeah.
Spooky.
Yay. Spooky.
But so, okay, this movie kind of was on the festival circuit, people were talking about it, then lots of other things happened, and it kind of went a little bit crazy and went, viral, as people love to say. And so what has that experience been like for you, and having this, like, lo-fi horror film all of a sudden, like, capture the internet's attention so quickly?
It's been surreal and a roller coaster of emotions, and it feels like since Fantasia, the roller coaster hasn't like gone down. It just keeps going. No. It goes, but it's like never actually on the trend chart, like stopped going up. Like there's been dips, but it's never really stopped. It's been weird. Cool. Like it's been cool. Like it's been positive, and I feel like the luckiest filmmaker in the world. And there's been parts where I get overwhelmed, or this happens, or I'm like, oh, it's starting to feel like a desk job, blah blah blah. And then I remind myself, like, okay, a few weeks ago I've been doing a thing where it's called the water bottle tour. So it's called the water bottle tour because it used to be you would go to all these different places like New Line Cinema, A24, or all these different production companies, and they give you a water bottle. And now it's all been through Zoom, right?
Uh-huh.
And which, if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, if they ever go to a different company, like Larry goes to a different company, they do give him a water bottle, right? I think there's an episode where it's a plot device in the episode. Anyways, so yeah, because of recycling. Okay. So anyways, so I had one the other day with A24, which was great. But it was like after doing a ton of different meetings, and I was exhausted, and I'm like, I have to have a meeting with A24. And I have to remind myself, like, Kyle, not even 4 months ago. Like, you have sweaters that you haven't washed from, like, the time back where you would have been like, Kyle, shut up. You're having a meeting with fucking A24.
A24.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
I can only imagine, because from my perspective, it was so weird because, like, I saw the movie, I wrote my review, and over the weeks, this review, I've been operating my site since 2018, and this review has become my most read thing on my site in the amount of time that it's been, like, since Fantasia, which is, so I was like, what is going on here? And that's when I started to realize that there was, it had gone viral and all that other stuff was coming out on it. But I was like, what is going on?
Yeah. It's been, I saw you tweeted that, and there's been a few other, like, smaller horror outlets who wrote reviews too, who said similar stuff. Like, there was a a podcast in Alberta who, it's not a horror, he's not like a horror thing. He's just like, hey, we have the same group of friends. You want to be on the podcast, blah, blah, blah. And then he was like, just by fluke, the episode I was on was the most downloaded episode he had that whole year of like, by like light years too, right?
It's wild.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
just gonna be such a surreal experience to be like, people want to hear me talk about things.
I know.
And it's just wild.
Especially for forever. Like, even when I was sending the rough cut of the movie to my friends, I was getting frustrated. Granted, when I was sending the rough cut to them, it was the holidays. So, like, they were busy. But still, I was like, really? And they're like, I'll watch your movie eventually, Kai. Like, and now it's like people are so excited by it, and it's weird. Good, but weird.
Oh, yeah. But I wanted to hear more about where the idea, came from. We have The Heck is the short film that, this kind of was the proof of concept for on YouTube. Everyone, if you haven't seen Heck, go watch that on YouTube, on Kyle's YouTube channel. But, like, where
we'll
did
include it in our show notes, too.
So, where did the kind of, like, it was kind of, like, the impetus for this concept for you?
So, shades of the story had been circling in my mind for years. And there was other weird things too, like a big thing in horror movies is like, how do you trap the people in the area?
Oh.
Right? So The Shining is, okay, well, they're snowed in. Easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And other things will be like, oh, they're in a remote area, or they'll be emotional. Like Poltergeist has a really good example. Like they send the kids to leave, but they stay in the house because they need to get Carol Ann, right? And one day I'm like, what if I just like, got rid of the doors and windows just because, and the kids are like naive and they're so young that maybe they're like, this is just a part of life, right? Like this is just something that happens. Who knows, right? So that happens, and then other shades of it had percolated. People had kept commenting the same nightmare on the channel. Like, I'm a little kid, my parents are missing, and there's a monster. That certainly shaded the concept. And I also wanted to do something involving really young kids because it's sadder when they're really little, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When they're like college age, air quote, kids, like adults, like we're almost kind of, and I haven't seen bodies, but I think they play on this of like, yeah, let's see them get killed, right? Like, and with little kids, you don't want to see anything bad happen to them. So I had played around with that, and yeah.
Wow. It's so wild to me, because this movie, it taps into something very primordial, I think, in us. I remember when I was done with this movie having to make like a beeline to my bedroom from the basement all the way up to the second floor, and just being like, this thing is really dark and it's kind of creepy. And I'm curious, how did the kids are fantastic in this. A lot of the attention is off of them with the camera, but how did you find these the kids that played the children?
They were great. So here was how basically the casting was done, was while we were still crowdfunding, we put out a call for, here's what we're casting, kids this age, grown-ups this age, right? The woman who played the mom was the first person to reach out. She contacted me right away. I did a little Zoom audition. I'm like, you're perfect. And just fun fact about the woman who plays the mom, Jamie Hill, she sounds exactly, and I want to emphasize this, exactly like Sarah Silverman. Like there was times where I was editing it where I had to like play with, even directing her, I'm like, you gotta slow down because it's eerie. She is Sarah and Sarah Silverman is funny.
Yes.
And so you don't hear it that much in the movie. Part of that was like I did stuff to alter her voice, but regardless, then she said, after I hired her, she's like, okay, so I have this friend Ross. I know wants to audition for the dad, and conveniently has a son who has been in like, I think he was in a commercial for recycling. And I'm like, oh, perfect, kid with acting experience, air quote, done. So I auditioned him and the son. And when I say auditioned the son, like, I'm like, yeah, that's a kid, good enough. Right? And then for a while, I'm like, okay, who's going to play Kaylee? And because no one had reached out to me for the role of Kaylee. And then by fluke, my friend Emma messaged me and she's like, oh, how's the crowdfund going? I'm like, it's going good, blah, blah, blah. And then I thought about it. I'm like, wait. Emma's kid is about what, 7? And then I'm like, hey, do you think,
Can I use your
Dolly
kid?
would, can I use your kid? And she's like, oh yeah, sure. She already likes horror movies. Like her daughter's seen like Carrie and other stuff. I'm like, awesome. So then, we got to the day of shooting and I was nervous about directing kids.
Right.
But I'd also psyched myself up in my mind of, okay, everyone says it's so difficult, and it is, but if you plan for it, if you're smart about it, human about it, like, don't do a long shooting day because it's, on top of being unethical, impossible to get a kid to work a traditional film set day. So we had scheduled it, okay, we're going to not even do a full half day of just having them in front of the camera. Then like maybe an hour at the most of them recording all their dialogue. We'll do all their dialogue post so that we don't have to worry about them doing the same line in front of camera over and over again. We did all this stuff to make it as kid friendly as possible. And on top of that, we had done other stuff like, don't talk down to them, right? Just be nice. Just, okay, we didn't want to overwhelm them. So I didn't say, okay, they have to read the full script because that's even impossible too. I just briefly said, okay, so this is a scary movie. There's a monster. You kids don't have to pretend to be scared on camera, but you will have to pretend to be scared in front of a microphone. We'll come to that bridge when we get it. The first shot we do, which is the first shot in the movie of them, the two in the hallway at the beginning of the movie, I was showing Lucas how to operate or hold the tape recorder. And so I said, action. They just did the scene. Like, they just did it. And I was like, cut. And I was like, oh, this is easy. And all the like anxiety melted off of me. And then it was like, bang, 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 done. And it's like, okay, we'll take a break and then we'll do the dialogue. And then we did the dialogue. And the way I did the dialogue was I just gave them line readings because they're not method or anything, right? They're not going to be like, don't give me a line read. So I'm just like, okay, in this scene, can you say this? Can you say, and they would say it back. And that's how we did it.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did it take to shoot it?
So we shot it 8 days. Well, okay, 7 days, 8 days if you count the camera test, but really it was 7 days. And the camera test, like, we didn't have cast or anything. It was just me and my DOP, Jamie McRae. So really it was 7 days. The first day, it was just the kids' camera, the kids' audio, the dad's camera, the dad's audio. That's it. Then day 2 and 3, no cast on set, just us filming ceiling, POV, blah, blah, blah. Day 4, we had like a half, or not even a half, like a quarter day of Jamie Hill, who plays the mom, doing camera and dialogue. Then the rest of that day, back to like filming whatever. And the thing is, a lot of those days, we're not just filming hallways. On top of that, we're doing POV shots, which some of them are surprisingly difficult. Like the scene of us going up the stairs at the end, we did like 20 takes of that. Every other shot was like 1 or 2 takes, but because it's hard, because the camera shakes, I wanted it to go a certain way. There'd be stupid stuff like my dad would turn on a light downstairs by accident. Like, there was all these things. The rest of it, though, was fairly easy. Or other stuff, too, like the parts where the TV turns on and off, we would have to make it play just right, or stuff like the Roku wouldn't work. But yeah, so 7 days.
Wow.
Like The Ring. Yeah.
And so you filmed this in your childhood home, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And my parents
Wow.
were awesome. And they were super accommodating too. Like, initially we were like, okay, well, we'll take down all the black wrap so you can live with windows. And then after the first day, my mom's like, we can leave up all the black wrap. That's fine. But you have to like put my plants by this one window that we'll remove the black wrap for so that the plants don't die. And outside of that, like, they were incredibly accommodating.
Wow.
Just hanging out on set.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And funny.
Yeah, it was great. The only thing we really had to reset a lot were the TVs, because, like, we needed to, like, bring in their TVs out of frame and then back in frame, which was fairly easy to do. It wasn't as complicated as you think. They don't have, like, fancy setups. It's just a big, like, flat screen and, like, a little cable box, which conveniently are fucking wireless. And I'm like, oh, thank God. We don't have to, like, rewire them.
Right.
That's so cool. Wow.
So
the evil TV, sorry, just one more thing.
Yeah,
The
please.
TV that appears in the living room is a monster. I hate that fucking TV. So it's fucking heavy. We used it for Heck, and even in Heck, it was a fucking diva. Like, we didn't have the remote for it. So, and the power button broke, so we had to, like, find a screwdriver and jam in. Then eventually we figured out if you unplug it and plug it back in, it default turns on. So, perfect. Then it sat in the Heck house forever. Then I didn't want to use it for Skinamarink. I wanted to use a smaller tube TV. And my friend Edmund's like, well, just use that one. It is from 1995. I know it's a bit up to date for that era, but it's not like historically inaccurate. And I'm like, fine, we'll use it. You have to schlep the thing into your friend's car, bring it to a house, schlep it to the living room. And then every time we would plug it and plug it back in, on top of default turning on, it would also go to channel 3, which is not the Roku channel that we had to play old cartoons. It was just static. So we would plug it back in. There'd be a second of noise followed by...
Yeah, that's horrifying. It fits the vibe, though, right?
It wasn't the vibe, though. It was fucking loud.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That TV is still at my parents' house because I don't want to...
I was going to ask what happened with it.
It's
still
probably
there.
500 pounds, right? It's like a boulder, right?
It's a boulder, and it's weighted all at the front.
No!
So you have to, like... Yeah.
The things we do for cinema.
I hate that TV.
Are you going to keep the
And
TV?
like, I wanted to smash it after we
gonna ask.
were done, but since the movie's blown up, my friend Edmund is like, well, no, that TV's famous now. I want to keep the TV. And I'm like...
You could probably sell it. Which sounds terrible, but someone would buy the shit out
we've
of that TV for
thought
real,
about,
though.
But I have to run it by Edmund first, because now that TV's a celebrity and
Well,
blah, blah, blah.
Also, how are you
And
going to
how-
ship that? How are you going to ship
How
that
expensive
sucker?
would it be to ship it?
Yeah,
To freight it.
It'll probably be someone who lives in the city and we've thought about, there's a handful of props who we thought like, hey, we could sell this and like give the proceeds to charity, right? So we'll see.
Yeah.
That'd be so cool. I want to meet the person who eventually buys that giant TV. That'd be so funny. Like, I had the Skinamarink TV. Why? it's so big. Where do you have space
With
for
no
that?
remote and a broken power button.
But I also wanted to hear more about how you got into filmmaking. Like, how did you, like, you know, you have Heck, you have a lot of your awesome short films on YouTube, you have this. So what was kind of like the starting point for you in wanting to make films, specifically horror films?
Since I was 7, I wanted to direct movies, and then I've always gravitated towards horror, so Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark were heavy influences on me. Other stuff like the Twilight Zone movie had a big impact on me, which if you watch, there's weird Easter eggs in the Twilight Zone movie, particularly the It's a Good Life segment directed by Joe Dante that are echoed in Skinamarink.
Oh.
other stuff like the Tales from the Dark Side movie with Debbie Harry, like...
Love that movie.
I know, yeah, it's so good. And then I got into horror through that, then it just sort of kept spitballing, because growing up, I was a weirdo kid who didn't have any friends, so watching movies became my friend, and yeah. And then when I was a teenager, I got into like weirder, kind of artsier movies like La Ventura and 2001: A Space Odyssey and all this, and yeah. And then in high school, I took video at Victoria School of Performing and Visual Arts, which Leslie Nielsen also went to, not at the same time. And then that segued into, then I took a gap year, then I went to film school, loved film school. My DOP actually also went to the same film school with me, so we were both grads of the same program. And then I took a break, then I got into my YouTube channel, then the rest is history.
Wow.
Hell yeah,
Wow.
That is amazing. Okay, but you said, you started wanted to want to start filmmaking and at the age of 7, you loved horror, but do you remember the first horror movie you ever saw?
I don't know the first one I ever saw. I have some very early memories of, in elementary school, there was a Hitchcock marathon on the CBC the weekend before back to school. And so that's when I saw Birds and Psycho, and those stuck with me vividly.
Oh, okay.
And as far as other ones that stuck in my mind, which, do you want me to wait? Because there's 2 that stuck in my mind that are the Scarred for Life tangential ones, or...
Yeah, so let's take a quick break, and then we can dig into those, because I am curious about that. So we're going to take a break, listeners. And we're back.
Break!
So quick.
So very quick. But,
all right.
So let's talk about your Scarred for Life pick. So today's a little bit different, where we have a couple films we've talked about before, but then a new one to throw into the mix. So Kyle, what films are we chatting about today with you for your Scarred for Life picks?
Yeah, so for context, for the podcast, I've just given a list, like, here's are all the movies that are being covered. If you can think of something that's not on the list, do that. And I looked through the list and I'm like, everything that scarred me is on this list. And so they said, okay, so my 2 picks that have already been covered are The Exorcist by William Friedkin and The Fly by Sir David he's not a sir. David Cronenberg.
He should be.
And then I have my other pick, which is kind of going around the bend because it didn't scar me and I didn't see it when I was a little kid. I saw it when I was a teenager, but it had a profound effect on me. Do you want me to talk about that first?
Yeah, just give me the title and then I'll read a quick synopsis and then we'll jump into chatting.
It's Outer Space, a short film from, I think, 1999 by a experimental filmmaker from Austria called Peter Tscherkassky. I can't pronounce the name. I'm sorry.
I believe that is it. But here's the super brief synopsis of Outer Space. It's footage from The Entity edited into an abstract nightmare.
That's very very brisk and brief. But
So what this filmmaker does is it's a part of a series he did. So he basically took a film version of The Entity into his dark room, played with it for an entire year, and came out with Outer Space, this short thing. So I highly recommend viewers pause the podcast, go and watch it. It's easy to find it. There's a very high quality version of it on Vimeo.
And we'll include that in our show notes as well, listeners, because I definitely recommend watching it.
It's that good. It's 10 minutes. So it's only
10 minutes.
A quick time commitment, and it's
Although
worth it.
I will add photosensitivity warnings because there is a lot of strobe light effects. So I watched the first time I watched it last night was in the dark, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm not photosensitive, but this was a lot." So I will throw that warning out there.
It's it's almost it might as well be called photosensitivity warning because it's just so. Just to describe how, I don't know how I found it when I was younger. I swear I was probably just Googling experimental videos, experimental cinema, and YouTube was a thing, I'm pretty sure was a thing at this. Well, the internet was definitely a thing. And I found it somehow. And I'm like, oh, what's this? Right? And so I started watching it, and it starts out just kind of flickering. Then the flickering becomes a house. Then from the flickering of the house, you hear a soundtrack. You get shades of, okay, this appears to be a movie, but tilted and grittied and stuttered and glitched. And then you see a woman enter a house. You hear her say something to someone off camera, and you just get little pieces of everything. So you don't quite hear what she says. You don't hear quite what he says. It sounds like she's talking to her kid, and she says, sure. And then you see her enter a room, but it's all just played and cut up. And as a teenager, this completely changed my idea of what movies could be and what I could be as a filmmaker and what the future of cinema could be, so that movies aren't just a story, aren't just an experiment, they can be an experience. So it's almost this photochemical, almost beat in the way a song has beats and feelings and emotions. A movie can be the same thing. It can be like a song that is 10 minutes and gives you feelings, a animalistic feeling, right? And that's outer space to a T. It's just feelings and power and emotions and images and there's this one amazing part of it where we see the woman, we see all the shit happen, static, and then there's this brief moment of almost the clearest part of the movie where all the shit stops.
Yeah.
You see the woman scream, grab something, and start like beating the camera with it and screaming, and you see it just repeat and reverb, and it's I've seen it maybe 50 times. One time I was watching it, my mom came into the TV room and was like, what is this? What is this? I think I had smoked something, and she could smell that I smoked something, and was
you're like, I'm fine. Don't look at me.
She was 100% fucking trolling me. Like, what is that? Right? Like, what a picture.
It's only 10 minutes long, but it's incredible. And so it also reminds me of a newer film. It's called The Timekeepers of Eternity, where someone did a very similar treatment to the Langoliers, I believe, the Stephen King movie. It's really cool. I'm sorry to hear screaming.
That sounds nuts.
It's really, really awesome, and I think that it is 100% inspired by this director, because it's very similar in terms of how
I gotta see this now.
It's really good. So I don't want to.
It played at what, Fantasia? It was at Fantasia, I think.
It played at a ton of festivals. I saw it at a festival. It hasn't come out wide yet, but basically the guy took every frame of the Langoliers and made a whole new movie and told a totally different story, and like ripped apart the pages. Mm-hmm. And this is very similar, because you even see, like, you know, the edges of the film reel, like of the film, you see
The
like
sprockets,
the slots.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I was like, the
just
holes.
like in outer space. Yeah.
And it's so interesting because in reading his bio, it says he only works in found footage. And as we all know, I'm a found footage freakazoid, and this is such a cool example of found footage filmmaking, but done in such a different way. Like, not filmed, but you're taking footage that you have found and reworking it into something horrific. I mean, The Entity is already a fucking terrifying movie.
Yeah.
Barbara
Hershey is queen.
Yes.
We watched it for the podcast, and I, had avoided it for a while because I was like, I don't know if I want to watch a movie about a woman getting raped by a ghost for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And it's really good, but when I saw that this was based, it was from that, I was like, oh no. And it's a nightmare. And it's a well done nightmare, but it takes all the anxiety of that.
And if anyone's going to pull off that role tastefully, it's going to be Barbara Hershey.
Ugh. She's so good in that movie. But it's sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I was just curious had you seen The Entity at all when you saw this?
I haven't seen it. I still haven't seen it.
Oh, you still haven't seen it?
Yeah.
Oh. Is it because you've watched the short so many times and you don't want to know the actual movies? You don't want to watch the actual movies?
Maybe. It's always been on my list for a while, but now that I'm thinking, maybe I shouldn't see it. I don't know. I don't know. I will see it eventually because I do kind of want to see the scenes that he took from The Entity. And he also has another one that is harder to find online as like a follow-up piece to Outer Space called I forget what it's called, but it takes other scenes from The Entity and plays with it even more in a weird way. And that one even goes weirder. There's like a 1-minute segment where it's just black and white and like this audio loop going, it'll mess you up. And if you get high beforehand, that 10 minutes becomes 45 minutes.
That sounds like it, honestly. And that's fine.
That is, yeah. I had never heard of this before. I'd never heard of the Filmmaker before. So I was like, what is this? So I always go on like a deep dive if I've never heard of anything. So I was curious about this. And you mentioned this a little bit, but I did find an explanation that what is his, why can't I think of his name? Peter. That Peter says he says he places a strip of unexposed 35 millimeter film on a piece of cardboard that measures 15 by 100 centimeters. The film strip itself equals 48 frames in length, which comes to 2 seconds of projection time. The raw stock I use is orthochromatic since it is desensitized to red light. He can work in a dark room, and he goes through like this whole long process of like nailing things down and holding it in one frame at a place and then he would copy the found footage into the raw material by exposing it to light. And he was talking about making optical collages and that parts of outer space include up to 5 multiple exposures laid on top of each other. And that's wild to me.
And when I saw it as a teenager, there's a lot of amazing experimental cinema, but there's a lot of very pretentious, boring shit. And this completely opened my eyes because it's not pretentious. It's not, it's the way you describe it. It's like, okay, well, I've seen that where the artist is like, I like to do this and the process. And it's not that at all. It's like such fucking power and cool. Maybe the coolest short film ever made. It's just so fucking balls to the wall.
Yeah, and so when I was looking at what he does with his work, he did describe it as an ongoing attempt to create a kind of meta cinema that invites the viewer to consider the building blocks of the medium. And that is a statement that could sound really pretentious, but if you watch the short, it is literally what he does. I love that he takes the film stock, he creates images that it almost seems as if instead of it like recontextualizes the entire entity as like a film that is about film that is actually actively attacking her. It seems like in some points, because you mentioned the part where it kind of everything clears and she grabs like I think it's a vase and starts attacking the camera itself.
I think it's a coat hanger.
Is it a coat hanger?
Yeah. Oh, it's so fucking cool. She goes up to the window, smashes, and she
It's just
awesome.
it's just super cool that he takes this idea of an entity attacking a woman in a film and then makes it as if we're kind of looking at the film itself attacking her. And it's such a fascinating way of recontextualizing that entire movie. What's funny is that I did find that apparently he claims that he chose to rework the entity based solely upon its plot summary. An invisible force sexually terrorizes a woman in her California ranch house. And he talked about carefully studying the VHS tape of the film, searching for significant details. He memorized the structure of the film and then composed a new narrative based on the notion of the film material integrating itself into the narrative, attacking the protagonist. And you have to be
That's so cool, man.
so
That's
smart.
Yeah.
cool.
And
Like, God, that's awesome.
I just
And like edgelord teenage Kyle was like, I'm gonna be that one day. I'm gonna take cinema. I'm gonna take the pillars of cinema and fucking blow it. I'm gonna be like spooky John Waters. like
Look,
that was.
I'm not like trying to blow smoke up your ass, but like you're doing some cool stuff. Like I think in watching this and seeing Skinamarink, like Terry and I were talking, we were like, oh my God, like we can totally see why this movie was so influential on Kyle. Like we can see where maybe you saw like, oh, I can just fuck with form however I want. Like film form doesn't have to be one thing. It can be so many other different things. So it's really cool to see this short, watching Skinamarink and kind of seeing really how much you were influenced by it.
Yeah, there's even like, there's one or two, I don't want to spoil it, but there's one or two parts in the movie, because I didn't want to do this too much where it's like, oh, I'm playing with like the actual medium as far as this and that, but there's two parts in it where we do see literal tone and light, like in outer space, and if you blink you actually kind of miss them. But yeah,
wow.
Oh, it's so cool. It's like a panic attack in a movie, I will say. Like it feels
it is
like how panic attacks feel, and that's terrifying as someone who has a lot of panic attacks or has dealt with panic attacks a lot. It's crazy to see when people can capture that. And like being able to capture that emotion, especially in reworking another movie, is really fascinating as well. Like it's a really cool and terrifying but refreshing emotional experience.
I just love I almost watch it in the same way you would listen to the same song over and over again, because you like first time I heard Dancing on My Own by Robin, I downloaded it and listened to it over and over and over, and because it's such a fucking good song. And I did the same with Outer Space. I just kept watching it over and over and over again.
Wow.
Yeah.
The thing that jumped out at me immediately when I was watching this is, so I'm a huge Nine Inch Nails fan, and there is this music video for Came Back Haunted that is a music video that David Lynch did. And it's very much like a bunch of static images interspliced with like footage and stuff like that. But the feel of that short film from like, I don't even know when it was, early, maybe mid to aughts, summertime. It was after this is my point. But it feels like that music video has some elements that reminded me very much of Outer Space. And it's so weird to think that we have an artist like Lynch who I would say that this Outer Space kind of feels a little Lynchian in the way that it kind of uses imagery and sound to like tell a different story. But then it also seems to me weird to me that I'm watching this music video and I'm thinking, this reminds me so much of Outer Space. And I'm curious if that, influenced him, because it's just, there's a lot going on.
Can I say, so weird coincidences and things. So I think while she was still pregnant with me, or when I was, I don't know, my mom really got into Twin Peaks. And I don't think she's not like a Lynch fan, but she's seen Mulholland Drive and liked it, right? Like, and so it's weird how she got into David Lynch. And then another weird thing, this has nothing to do with Outer Space, but my mom's term for like a weird movie that is odd, but you kind of like is, the movie's very outer space, right? But she means it in terms of like, it's heady, it's blah, blah. It's good,
Right.
but it's very, quote, outer space. Like, I think she called Salem's Lot. She's like, it's outer space, but it's good. Like, I don't know.
So when you saw this, did it lead you down to track down more of Peter's work? Have you seen a lot of his stuff?
Yeah,
or?
I saw that companion because he has a trilogy. I think it's called the CinemaScope trilogy.
Yeah,
and it's outer space. It's this other one he did
Le
of the
Arrive?
Entity, and
then Dreamwork.
Dreamwork, that's the other one. Dreamwork is it. That's the other one. I swear I rewatched Dreamwork a bunch too. Outer Space is king, but Dreamwork is awesome too. And then he did another one where it's clips from a Western that he took and played around with, and yeah.
He did it with erotic films too. The Exquisite Corpse. It's not Exquisite Corpse, but Corpus. The Exquisite Corpus. He also did it with erotic films and ads.
I haven't seen those. I don't know if I've seen those ones.
That's cool. Yeah, I was just looking at all of his stuff and curious about
his stuff is very like it plays. It's not so much festival-y. Like it has played at festivals, but a lot of his stuff has played in like art galleries.
I was gonna say,
right?
This is like you go to an art gallery and see it playing on a wall, and like you sit and watch it. Like that's the kind of which is
kind of an affront, because I feel like this demands either a theatrical or at home lights off, sound up experience.
Yeah.
100%.
So we also talked about two other movies that scarred you for life, which were The Exorcist and The Fly. So I would love to hear your scarred for life stories for both, but maybe we'll start with The Exorcist, just because everyone is so very familiar with that title.
Absolutely. So I remember A&E used to be a smart people channel.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
My mom really, she had it on all the time growing up. And I remember one weekend, I couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. The Exorcist, the edited for TV version of The Exorcist was on, and I caught a glimpse of it. And I think it was, I don't even remember what part, but I'm just like, no. And I left. And then my mom and dad told me about The Exorcist and how it was the scariest movie ever made.
Right.
A movie so scary that people couldn't sit through. They fainted. And that just like the idea that a movie could achieve a status in the same way that, like, it was almost like it brought a quantifiability to a movie outside of the boring stuff like, it made a box office amount or this or that. A movie could achieve, this is the scariest. No other movie is as scary as this. And that always stuck with me of, you could quantify something. You, as a filmmaker, could aspire to achieve that or succeed that.
Okay.
Right? And also, outside of the intellectual of that vision stuck with me so much. Like, just that little glimpse of the movie, I'm pretty sure it was the head spinning scene. The first head spinning scene where, she turns and she says, you know what she did, your cunting daughter, which I'm pretty sure was augmented for A&E, but regardless, that just stuck with me so much. And as a kid who wasn't quite raised with religion, I was still afraid of the devil just because of that, right?
Wow.
And
okay.
I obsessed about, I wasn't raised with, I didn't have like my mom was raised Christian, but she didn't really raise us in Christian, like we were basically raised irreligious.
Okay.
Like we did have copies of the Bibles in my house, but like we weren't we were like a Christmas, St. Patrick's Day, whatever kind of Christian. But the devil really scared me, and I kept talking about it. And then one day my mom sat me down and she's like, okay, Kyle, I don't know if the devil's real. if the devil is real and he comes to get us, don't worry, because mommy and daddy will protect you from him.
That's like too
Wow.
much.
Just
that's
because
wild.
of The Exorcist.
Did it work?
Yeah, once she said that, it and I almost felt stupid after she said that. I'm like, Kyle, you're 7 years old now. Enough of this nonsense.
Enough with this devil fear nonsense.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like full-grown adults are still terrified of the devil. Like very real.
I remember after it, we went on like a family trip, like a vacation where you go to a hotel and then you go see family in Saskatchewan or BC, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But we stayed in a hotel room and I remember it was either early morning or late at night, just the blinds and a chair. And that sticking with me and thinking, is the devil there? Which is such a weird thing. Feels like I'm in the psychiatrist chair right now. I don't know.
You're like, yes, tell me more about the devil you saw in the chair and the blinds. What does this represent for you?
I don't think I saw the actual movie in full till I was maybe 14. And remember being a tad disappointed, but not that disappointed.
There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of like talking and like a lot of like religious crises going on that like are not scary whatsoever. Well, I mean, I guess it could be scary to some people. Though. It could be scary because it gets you for scared of the devil, and he's talking about that. But
here's why that movie is so beautiful. So I like movies like The Conjuring. Don't get me wrong, but there are parts in it that I feel as a non-religious person a little eye-rolly. And The Exorcist is so grown up, so smart, so elegant. If you take any scene in the bedroom, with the exception of the stairwell scene, out of the movie, it's a movie about a mother whose daughter is sick and a priest who talks her through it and visits the sick daughter. It's that perfect 70s hyper-realism, elegance, like grown up matter-of-factness approach to it. Like the scene where she meets the priest for the first time and he's like something O'Neill, and she's like, please go away, because she thinks he wants an autograph because she's an actress, blah blah blah. And they have this very matter-of-fact, very realistic discussion that echoes very matter-of-fact discussions that grown-ups have, right?
Is that the scene where she has the black eye and he recognizes her? And she's like, please don't talk to me.
Away.
And then she like reveals that like her fucking kid punched her in the face.
It's her
Reagan kid punched her in the face. And like that part, especially as I've gotten older, that scene is so scary. Because one, I mean, like you're saying, it could easily be discussed as like a domestic violence situation or something, like again, like a drama. It's not like the devil is in this child. It's like I am in a situation where I need help and like I don't know where else to turn. And I actually hadn't thought about it like that movie like that. Yeah, to be perfectly honest,
there was two movies I felt that reinvented horror in that era, 5 years apart. The first was Night of the Living Dead, right? So enough of beautiful woman in a castle horror. That's done. Night of the Living Dead, right? This is going to be horror from now on. Matter of fact, Vietnam, blah, blah, blah. And then 1973, The Exorcist. This is what horror is going to be in the 70s. It's going to be movies like The French Connection, right? Grown up, matter of fact. This is the new horror.
Yeah. You know, I love when people talk. This is our third time that we've talked about The Exorcist on the podcast. And I recently rewatched it back in December for a recording. And I'm not a huge fan of this movie. I'm going to be perfectly honest.
That's fine.
But every single time I watch it, I find myself more drawn to the dramatic parts. Like you were talking about cutting out all the creepy supernatural stuff and it's just a drama. And that is what it kind of has pulled me in more as an adult than the idea of like the scariest movie ever.
It just always stuck with me. And I had a conversation when I was about 24, 25 with my boyfriend, who's still my boyfriend, and just showed me that he got pizza.
Ooh, delicious.
But from a place that I'm not familiar with, so we'll see. But
ooh, a gamble.
We were having smokes on the apartment steps. I don't smoke anymore, Nicorette. but where I told him the same thing of, as a kid, the idea of The Exorcist and as a filmmaker growing up was something that felt so aspirational.
Mhm.
And he said, I hear what you're saying, but that was just such a phenomenon of that time that I don't know if movies do anymore, right? Because the monoculture is gone and this and that. And maybe they don't. Like, people have brought up Skinamarink, although it's this viral online horror phenomenon, but it's certainly never going to be The Exorcist, because The Exorcist was when we had one culture and a movie could change that one culture.
Yeah, it's true.
Whoa.
Like-
Sorry, I'm like, just like that. I have never thought about The Exorcist like that, and like that context for the 70s versus now. Like, that is so fascinating, because, like you're saying, we don't have, like, because of the, like, digital age, I feel like it's so much harder for something like that, like a movie, to have such a huge cultural, especially with horror. You know, like, I feel like we still have those movies.
Superhero movies.
It's
like the only thing I can think of.
But even that, like, so my mom, her mom definitely knew about The Exorcist when it came out, right? Versus now, my mom doesn't know about Get Out or Us or Nope. And she's not anti-horror. Like, if horror's on, she'll watch it, right? She's seen The Babadook. She's seen The Snowtown Murders. That was an example of, I brought it up to her and she said, oh, I actually saw that. And
wait, that movie?
Yeah.
That movie is awful.
I know.
Like, oh my god.
I've never seen it.
Because it has a synopsis where you don't know it's horror. This is true crime, right?
Yeah, it's based on a serial killer thing, Terry, in Australia. It's like, it's fucked up.
Australia.
Straight. No.
But same with the Babadook. But the big zeitgeist horror movie of the last little while after the Babadook, I would say, as far as breaking mainstream culture, was probably Get Out, because it's been parodied and this and that. And my mom hadn't seen it. Because the monoculture has disappeared to an extent.
Yeah. Huh.
Wow.
So I'm curious, because you mentioned the devil and you're terrified of the devil. Were you a scared kid growing up with horror films?
Oh yeah, and I still am.
Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah, because I don't think I would say I'm jaded to an extent because I've seen it so much.
Right.
But the last movie, and I saw it fairly recently, that I'm like, I have a test where it's like, this was a movie that legitimately scared me. And it's, if I go to bed and I have to turn around and I have to look in the corner to see if the idea or the sound or the monster was there. The last movie that did that for me, hands down, was Lake fucking Mungo. Yeah. Because I swear, she's there. She's
there. Alice is there.
She's just
everywhere.
vibing.
Alice is vibing.
She's just vibing.
Alice tragically died. That's not a spoiler. It's the whole point of the movie. Sorry, Terry's laughing at me, but the Lake Mungo
lots
is
of
like
found footage movies like that. But the reason Lake Mungo works so well is because it's done very realistically. You could see where I could see turning on TV in Australia, and here's a documentary on Australia's version of Discovery Channel or ID Discovery, where this show would be a thing. And the point of it is it's just her face. She's just looking at you. Just like that. And it's sad. It's sad.
It's so sad. And it's so heartbreaking. Oh my god.
When the mom says that, like, oh, I see parts of Allison where it's like, leave me alone, right? And my daughter was I started seeing that in my daughter. Yeah.
Wait, Terry, hold on a second. I can't remember. Have you seen this, or you saw it and you didn't like it?
Yeah, I saw it. I didn't like it.
Yeah, well,
Why?
Well, because Terry's wrong. I love Terry. till the day I die, but he's wrong about this, and that's
His
okay.
subjective opinion. I'm just curious. What did you not? Did you give it a proper horror viewing? Lights off, sound up.
No. So I remember.
That's why you didn't like it.
I remember thinking people were saying this is the scariest movie. This is the scariest movie, and I sat down to watch it. I was bored. So I need to revisit it because I don't think it was in the right headspace. I was like expecting something different than what was given, and I didn't approach it on its own. I mean, we might cover that at some point on our Patreon episode. And I will give it another watch.
A big thing is proper viewing experience. You need to, if you watch a horror movie, and I'm not talking a horror movie like, have you guys seen Deadstream?
Oh yeah.
So fucking stupid, funny, hilarious, right?
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to apologize to the minorities, right? Like just hilarious shit, right? But not necessarily the horror movie where you need to 100% give it proper horror movie experience, because that's more of a horror movie that you could watch with your friends and have drinks,
party.
Blah, blah, blah. But like Mungo, lights off, sound off, ideally alone, right?
Dead silence, dark, noise canceling headphones on, like immerse yourself in the
Oh, what a funny, stupid
Deadstream.
There's so many stupid, like, I couldn't stop laughing during that whole movie. He
nails
it.
Go
see Deadstream
Yeah,
on
what's
Shudder.
on Shudder?
We talked to the filmmakers on the podcast, and the way that he nails a certain kind of YouTuber is just, it's perfect.
It portrays the internet very authentically, and that
it does.
The internet is very mean sometimes. Yeah.
But okay.
Nope, go right ahead.
I think we're probably gonna do
The Fly?
thing. Yeah. We're all the same. But I want to say, let's talk about The Fly now and hear about that story.
Story around The Fly, directed by feminist icon David Cronenberg. I'll come back to that. So, that was another movie where, again, I don't think it was on TV. I think my parents rented it and put it on. They loved it. But that was more just images sticking with me.
Okay.
There's so many disgusting, horrifying, realistically portrayed images, whether it's the vomit drip on someone's body or Jeff Goldblum becoming Brundlefly that you can't get rid of. And in a nutshell, is done very matter-of-factly.
Mm-hmm.
And also, rewatching as a grown-up will make me cry.
Yes!
Because, like, I can't say too much, because I will start crying, but the part where the bathroom, Brundlefly, Gina Davis, and she's like, I don't know what you're saying. I don't understand. And she bursts into tears and runs out. She sees, what's his face? The schlubby ex-boyfriend. And she's like, no, we have to go to the hospital tonight. I don't want it in my body. And she bursts. It's so matter of fact. Coming back to The Exorcist, right? A grown-up movie that is matter of fact about things.
Mm-hmm.
And odd thing tying into that, the other day on Twitter, horror Twitter, a woman said she was at a film festival and she brought up that the last movie she really liked was Crimes of the Future. And this guy was like, I didn't like that. Must be a chick thing. And then it became an ongoing joke of, Cronenberg, chick flick. The Fly, chick flick. Video Jerome, chick flick.
Crash? Oh my god, Crash is 100% a chick flick.
Chick flick, right? As a joke, because it's like, he's not really a chick. I think technically The Fly fails the Bechdel test, but regardless. And so it became an ongoing joke. And then I tweeted, and this was before my Twitter following was that big, but I tweeted, oh yeah, the other day I put on The Fly, and my boyfriend is like, so we're gonna watch... Do we really have to watch The Fly by feminist icon David Cronenberg again? But we do.
I'm gonna just start calling him that now. Just feminist icon.
Feminist icon David Cronenberg. And then the other day I was talking about something.
Let women fucking crash cars. That's what he does.
Yes.
He liberated us.
Well.
Sorry.
But The other day I was talking with my mom and I brought up not even The Fly, I just brought up Flies, and she's like, you know, that movie The Fly, I fucking love that movie. And I told her about how the whole in-joke of him being a feminist icon, so.
Your mom sounds like a badass. I love that your mom is just like casually like, I love The Fly. Oh yeah, I watched the Snowtown Murders.
The Snowtown
very
Murders.
much the cool suburban mom, but in many ways she's like, because she's a baby boomer who's almost Gen X, like mid 60s, right? So, I mean, born in the mid 60s, not she's in her mid.
Yeah.
So she could have almost been Gen X. And people forget that generation was the first generation that was like, weed? Yes. What, thank you, sir. Let's get high as fuck all the time. And ever since it was legalized, she's done edibles, a grown-up amount of edibles every night.
That's amazing.
Fucking cool. Wow.
But because I'm such a goody two-shoes, like, I never touch the stuff anymore.
Your mom's cooler than you, Kyle. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, evidently.
You know,
it's Twin Peaks, Cronenberg, and getting high.
An Australian, like indie Australian movies about
and the Snowtown murder.
Horrendous murders. I'm just stuck on that one. That's incredible.
That surprised me
wild.
too. She's like, yeah, I've seen this.
You're like, oh, what?
You know, it's funny because for the longest time, The Fly was the only David Cronenberg movie I had ever seen. I am still woefully missing a lot of Cronenberg, but I'm doing a side podcast where I'm watching all of his films, so I'm like getting to know his oeuvre. But like before like this last year, I think I had only seen 3 of his movies. The Fly, which I'd seen so many times as a kid because the special effects were just. It's what I wanted as a kid. I was like, this is gooey, this is goopy, this is gory. I love it. Then it was The Dead Zone. And then it was, I always forget which one it was. It's whatever one has the bathroom fight with
Eastern Promises.
Violence.
It's Eastern Promises.
I get those two confused.
I always forget which one it is.
My husband and I had the same conversation not 2 weeks ago, where he was like, "What's the one where Viggo Mortensen is naked in the?"
You'll have to be more specific. No,
like,
the Cronenberg one. Again, you will have to be more.
I was like, "There's 2."
I think that is he. I haven't seen it. Is he naked in Crimes of the Future?
I think he's naked, but like not in like the full on naked fight way, like just in like I'm a sick sad boy kind of way. So it's not as evocative.
Cronenberg is played a lot in Canada because a lot of his movies qualify what are called Canadian content rules, which are this movie was made in because Canadian broadcasters have to play a certain amount of Canadian content. So David Cronenberg would get played a lot. Same thing with Heavy Metal, the animated movie.
Oh, yeah.
Growing up, that was on all the fucking time because it was that weird. And Canadian content has gotten better in the past decade. But growing up, there was not that much great Canadian content, save for a few exceptions like Heavy Metal, Black Christmas, and Cronenberg's early work. So, yeah.
Hell yeah.
History.
Cinema. Okay. Well, so do we want to start wrapping up and give Outer Space our rating out of 5 to wrap up? We've already given... Okay. Do we want to move towards that?
Do I go first or do you?
We go first. You get the final word.
Okay.
So the first, we're going to have Terry go first. And how many interlaced Barbara Hershey's, Terry, out of 5 do you give Outer Space?
You know, this is an assault on the senses. I when I first watched it, I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to say about this movie when we sit down and talk about it, because there's just a lot of imagery, a lot of sound, a lot of stuff happening in a very short amount of time. It's amazing to me how this takes scenes throughout most of the movie or dialogue and incorporates them into 10 minutes that somehow is telling a cohesive story. It might take a little few viewings to like understand that story, but like there's a story here. And I was so impressed with finding out a lot of the filmmaking techniques behind all of this and his obsession with film, like film, not like digital media or whatever, but actual film stock. And I watched it again right before we started recording just to like, I got to see this again and understand what's going on. And I fell in love with it. So I honestly, I'm gonna have to give it 5 interlaced Barbara Hershey's out of 5. What about you, Mary Beth?
I'm also gonna have to give it 5. I also watched it right before.
Oh,
and
wow.
I've never felt like a panic attack captured so well in film. And I think it's because he's not trying to shoot a woman having a panic attack. He's taking material from an already extremely disturbing movie and making it somehow even more disturbing and upsetting. And it's so impressive being able to do that. So again, I'm like, when I saw Timekeepers of Eternity, I was like, what can we really be doing here? And it's like, oh, I was so incorrect about like what you can do with that. And I think, especially seeing him describe himself as like a found footage artist, this also gives me like a whole new way of thinking about found footage and wanting to look at more into found footage. And I think this 10-minute film has like opened my brain, and that's why it gets 5. It's incredible. So Kyle, you have the final word. I think I know the answer, but like how many
spoilers? So yeah, I will give it 5 Barbara Hershey's out of 5.
Perfect.
Because it's or 5
interlock.
Barbara Hershey, she's Beaches. You know,
Beaches.
I've never seen Beaches.
I'm tired. You're tired. What a sad.
That's a sad movie.
That's from Beaches at the end where she says to the kid and she's done. I'm tired work. No, wait. Bette Midler. Anyways.
Beaches.
Fucking Beaches.
Fucking Beaches. Oh, man. Well, thank you so much, Kyle, for bringing us the smorgasbord, including outer space. Where can our listeners find you? And the floor is yours. What do you want to? What do you have to talk about? What's coming? Do you have anything coming up that you're going to be working on next? And whatever you want to talk about.
I'll be writing something, but after Skinamarink comes out, there'll be a quiet period followed by another. But so. Go to skinamarink.com to find tickets if you live in the United States. If you live in Canada, check your local listings. We're playing in most of the major markets in Canada, save for some, I'm sorry. And we are also playing at the New Farm Cinemas in Brisbane, Australia. And Prince Charles Theatre. We have a week-long run at the Prince Charles Theatre in London, and also I believe it's called the Mockingbird Cinema in Birmingham, UK.
Hell yeah!
Wow!
In theaters everywhere, January 13th.
I'm gonna isolate that, just you saying that.
This picture is not yet rated.
Well, listeners, you have heard from us. We want to hear from you. Have you seen outer space and have thoughts? We would love to hear them. You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm a Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. And if you want to help support us, go out to our Patreon. We got a lot of content there.
We do! Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there. But most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.